someone who has a dream but feels stuck, if you are facing obstacles that seem overwhelming, or if you just need a dose of motivation to keep pushing forward, then you are in the right place. So buckle up, dreamers. Anchor Your Dreams is not just a podcast. It's a community of dreamers supporting dreamers, women supporting women. Subscribe, follow along, and let's navigate the seas of ambition together. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and empowered. The journey begins now. Welcome to the Anchor Your Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Megan McQuillan, and today we have a guest whose journey is as inspiring as her expertise in downsizing. Joining us today is Rae-Lynn Varga, the downsizing specialist and owner of Refine Home, Inc., a thriving Vancouver Island-based business. What makes Rae-Lynn's story fascinating is her progression from a startup entrepreneur to the driving force behind a successful and growing initiative. Rae-Lynn's journey is a testament to the power of passion, dedication, and the ability to adapt. From humble beginnings as a teacher of 30 years to transforming Refine Home, Inc. into a household name in downsizing, she has not only helped people declutter their physical spaces, but has also created a brand that resonates with those seeking a more intentional and simplified lifestyle. In today's episode, we'll not only explore the art of downsizing with Rae-Lynn, but also delve into her innovative journey, learn how she navigated the challenges, embraced opportunities, and built a business that goes beyond just organizing spaces. It's about transforming lives. So if you are ready to be inspired by the story of an entrepreneur who turned dreams into reality and discover the secrets behind downsizing success, stay tuned. Rae-Lynn Varga is here to share her unique insights on today's episode of the Anchor Your Dreams podcast. Yes, very nice to meet you. You are my first guest, so I just want to say Thank you so much for signing up to be a guest and also being the first. There's going to be probably a few things as we go that I might have to pause and just quickly check into. This is absolutely a safe space. Best place to start is to hear a little bit about you. And I'd love to know a bit about like where you grew up, where you're from.
Hey, awesome. So I actually grew up on the island in Port Alberni and Nanaimo. And I went to college here, kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I was a young 19-year-old. And then I ended up spending about 27 years up north in Smithers. Packed up my 2 young kids at the time and said, let's go. And I spent previous to this career, I spent the last 31 years as an early childhood educator. So I worked with children and youth. I'm going to say over half my life. I'm trying to think, how old am I? So that was my real passion. And my first love was working with children that were preschool aged and just kind of gravitated into working with youth. So I did most of my career in that field in Smithers. I spent lots of time in Nanaimo being mentored and had a really great friend that was my motivation. And she's continued in that industry. I've returned back to the island about 3 years ago with my youngest son, who's almost 19, and career to this is what I'm doing now with Refine Home. So I, honest to goodness, feel so grateful. Like I've had 31 years of working with this younger population. And my second career, which I'm going to say really is my second passion, is kind of working with people near the latter part of their life. And it's all the same stuff. It's just a different generation of people. So it's been really neat. I did not plan this second career this way. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And it's happened. I mean, I feel like I've manifested it in some way, and it's just become more than what I ever thought it was going to be. So that's a little bit about me. I have 3 kids. 2 of my children are in their 30s. I have 2 grandkids, and then my 19-year-old is starting on his adventure in his life. So yeah,
wonderful.
That's a little bit about me.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what was the transition like going from being a teacher and having this career, like, and really being in it for 31 years is such a long time. So to go from doing something which is everything you know to not only moving, but, starting a whole second career and passion.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you honestly, I had a lot of fear because my comfort zone was children. My comfort zone was working with youth. And I often worked with nonprofits. I worked for a school district. And the very last adventure I had in the industry was running my own early learning center. And I'm telling you, it was like the icing on the cake for me in my career, having my own business and working with the most incredible team and women and families. And honestly, the community was just amazing. So I somehow took a lot of those experiences, especially in the final days of my career, and thought about what are the things I love to do. I love working with people. I have a passion for business. I have a passion for working with women. And in my industry, there's 99% of the women in the early childhood education field are women. And I really started to listen to kind of that last experience. Like, what is it that I love to do? And it's working in team environments. It's about being empowered by the women that I'm working with and also providing some support and modeling and empowering them. So that's kind of what led to the second career.
I love that so much because as I'm getting older and doing different things in my life, helping others has always been something that is a passion of mine. Like every time I sit, like you had mentioned, and just think about what it is that you love, I always circle back to helping other people. And I just love that were able to kind of transition from being an educator to owning your own business, also in education, and now transitioning. So it does sound like you had a little bit of a transition versus it being so cut from doing one thing and then moving totally into something completely different as far as business is concerned.
Yeah.
What could you say was your sort of biggest struggle through the transitions? Like I heard you say fear is one of them. So how did you get over some of your fear?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it had to do with the timing of the decision that I made. So when I officially retired, I thought it was going to be, okay, good. I'm retired. I've done my time. I loved my job. I wasn't ready, to be truthful. I was not. And I don't know, in the capacity of work that I was in teaching and educating, if you're ever really ready. I don't think you're ever really ready. I really mourned that. And it came at a time like right before the pandemic. And I had moved for a short time to Alberta. I wasn't super happy there. I was struggling, and I kept asking myself, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Or what's going to be the next step for me? So I think the timing of when I made the decision to go into a different path, the timing was terrible. I moved and I started a new business during a time in the world where it was terrifying for people. I didn't want to be scared, but I also knew that, and at the time, I was a single woman and I had this son that was finishing his last 2 years of school. And I thought, I know that I'm meant for more. I know that I'm meant to do something really important. The part that was scary for me, and the fear, where that fear came from, wasn't so much about I've got to make money. It's I need to choose something that's going to make me happy.
I love that so much. I think it's funny because this is something that does keep coming up for me, simply because I think, and I just was sharing this with a friend. Actually, I read a post from someone that I follow. And, one of the things that she had mentioned was as soon as she let go of the idea of lining her pockets with funds to like
Yes.
build that for herself, and actually allowed the idea of lining her pockets to help other people. And that really hit home for me as well, because every time I've tried to do something to make fun, like money, and not necessarily reach the whole six-figure aspect of business, but I just always feel out of alignment. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like wondering, what did I do? What do I need to change? So I just love that you were in a transition phase, but also able to ask yourself, what is it that I can do that is not just for that one thing, finances?
I 1,000% agree. And I'll tell you, I think from that first career that I had as an educator, and I think I took a lot of those years of experiences and learning into this next part. And a lot of it really was waking up every day, going to work, was driven by heart and driven by passion and driven by excitement. And, I didn't have it all figured out when I started this career as an early child educator. And it just kind of morphed into like one thing after another. And it was just this. And so I take that first experience, that first career, and I'm just moving it over into what I'm doing now. And it's honestly the exact same thing. When I wake up, I get to wake up and be excited. And you know what? It's kind of like nervous and excited. It's like nerve sighted. It's, it's like, gosh, I don't have clients booked 2 months down the road, but it's kind of like you build it and they come. And that's just sort of how I lead. And every day is excitement and passion. So the challenge for me was the fear, but it wasn't necessarily the fear. Sure, I'm not going to sit here and say that I wasn't worried about not having an income, of course, but it was more about choosing. I got to choose right. Am I doing the right thing? And I think if we lead from a place of what excites us, what do I want to wake up every day and learn about? You know, it's sort of like I relate it to high school, which I didn't love because I was told I've got to take this course and this course and this course and this course. Right? And every day felt like, oh, I got to go to school. But when you choose your path, when you choose the career, when you pay your tuition, when you sign up for the course and the workshop, there's this excitement. And I feel like we give it more of an effort and it's less of a struggle to do it. And it's the same thing in the career choice that we make. It's when you're doing something you love, it just feels like, oh, I want to get started. And I really feel like that attitude that we have as a person, we it's kind of like positive, we gain positive from positive. And I feel like that's really led me to where I'm at now. And I started literally from nothing in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of I didn't have this big fat bank account just dying to spend the money on the business. I didn't
Right.
have
Yeah.
this years and years of training. It was really about just saying, I'm doing this. I'm committed.
I love that. And that's kind of one of the elements of being an entrepreneur that I would love to like hear more stories about, because now with social media and seeing everybody's highlight reels and seeing a lot of businesses saying things like you don't have to hustle and you can do it this way and you can do it that way. I feel like a lot of those messages are coming from people who may have started off small and with nothing and gained to a certain level, but it almost feels like it's not relatable. Like they're no longer relatable to someone who is just
Mm.
literally starting off. So I'd love to hear a little bit more in this new career this new passion that you've started with nothing. How did you manage to build it from nothing to where you are today?
Great question. Key thing really was connections, networking with people that need me. It's an easy one when you're a teacher, an educator. You got to go to the families and you go to the children. So in my industry as a downsizing specialist and professional organizer, who needs my services? And right out of the gate, even moving here and getting settled was I've got to find a fantastic group of realtors. I've got to find some amazing stagers and movers and people that sort of work in this industry. So it was about taking the leap of faith and putting myself out there and introducing myself and getting on Zoom calls, because that's what was happening at the time, and letting people know about what I do. And I will tell you, honestly, I did not have it all figured out. I didn't know how it was going to go. I was learning as I went, which is such a cliche kind of thing to say. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, I never thought about that. So realtors would ask me questions. Stagers would say, so Ray, how do you handle this? And I was thinking to myself in my head, I have no idea. So by making those connections and collaborating, I was able to define and refine what I was doing.
Oh.
Right?
Yes. I love that. Define and refine.
But it was making those connections with other people where I was sort of forced to really figure out, what am I doing? What is this business going to look like? Because when I first started, I just came here as a professional organizer and I was doing a little bit of downsizing for mature clients. Then I felt like after 5, 6, 7, 8 months, I'm going to call myself a downsizing specialist, because I'm really specialized in helping people declutter and get from large house A into, let's say, assisted living B. So it just kind of defined itself. So I think it's fair to say we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to even have a title for what we're doing. I think we just have to have some ideas of what brings us passion and excitement. And the rest just sort of, as we make those connections with people, I feel like we're put in a position, maybe we're forced a bit to not have it all figured out, but then we're starting to think like, yeah, shoot, I never thought about this from a realtor's point of view. I never thought about this from a moving point of view. And we're starting to think about all the moving parts and the logistics and the piece that defines what we do and refines our role in the passion, in the business of that we've come up with. So I did not have my titles figured out. I didn't know what business was 100% going to look like, but the partnerships I made with people and the collaborations put me in a position where I had to really start thinking about that.
I love that. That is such a great startup story, because you've gone from just allowing things to flow and to happen and trusting the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, it's hard for a lot of people who are perfectionists or used to having things sort of really structured, like my day starts at this time, my day ends at this time. I have lunchtime scheduled for this time, because of course you're surrounded by children and a schedule that is already set in place for you. And now you've got this schedule that you have to create for yourself, being your own to-do list, not just somebody else's sort of check boxes. So that's great. And I love the define and refine sort of tagline there.
It really is. And I think, my company, Refine Home Inc., it was a name that came about. And truthfully, my business initially started as a cleaning line, which my daughter came up with the name Refine Home Inc., and she created the logo. And I thought, this is amazing. I love it. It's really about refining, because changing seems like, ooh, that's scary. I got to change. She's going to come in and tell me what to change in my house. I've got to change the way I live my life. It feels scary or harder. And maybe it feels a little bit, from my point of view, a little bit more critical. Whereas if I go in from the approach of, I'm refining with you, we're going to refine this in your home. It's the same thing in business. It really was a refining and defining in how business was going to operate for me. And when you talk about kind of starting with nothing, I had an idea in my head, and it's like starting a race. I'm committed. the gun went off. I'm committed to it, and it's going to be painful along the way. There's going to be some real hard times on this race or running this journey, but it's not letting that stuff interfere with where you want to go. And people say, well, how do you know where you want to go? It's really about making those connections and having that sort of attitude of, yep, it's a process. I'm not going to have all the answers right away.
Oh, that is so true. Everything really is a process, and trusting in the process can really help as well. Through all that and through all your connections and everything that you have made, is there any other sort of course, you started doing this in a unprecedented time of the world. So what are some things that you have been able to celebrate?
I'm going to say, I want to really think about this because I feel like there's a lot to celebrate. I'm going to say from a personal point of view, I'm so glad that I did not listen to, I did at times, truthfully, but I didn't focus on that negative chatter, that mindset that says, like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Or this is too hard, or because I think a lot of times I know actually from my own experience that we get in our own way and our fear holds us back from where we're really supposed to go. And I think I always believed that. And I think at times we listen to those things in our head, the doubt and the questioning, like, should you really be doing this, Rae-Lynn? Like, should you really be taking this leap of faith? And I did have those things going on for me. I didn't spend very much time there because it's not going to lead me to where I want to go. So it was, that saying, if you're afraid to do something, do it scared. Yeah. And I got to tell you, like anything I've done in my life and in personal life and my business life, always had a little bit of fear. And I believe that, I think one of the brain tattoos that I have is if life was easy, we would learn nothing. So it's not going to be easy. I already accept that. It's going to have some bumps in the road. There's going to be some difficult times. I mean, moving my son out here without any notice was the worst part for me because he's my son and I wanted him to be part of this journey. But here he is, fast forward 2.5 years from when I came here. And I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this. He said to me, I'm sorry for making this so hard on you. I had no idea like how important this dream was to you. And I could see the success in it now. And I just didn't see it before. And that's a 19-year-old, not even, he's 18. And he was the biggest heartache and challenge for me was because I needed him to be happy. And I wanted him to be settled in his new school and finish those final 2 years, which are, we know grade 11 and grade 12 are super important for kids. They were for me. And I've just taken him from where he belonged to where he didn't want to go. So to hear him say to me 2 or 3 months ago, like, what was that all about for me? Why was I so upset? I didn't know how important this was. And he now, as 2 years later, is seeing the success of that commitment, seeing the success of the challenges that I've gone through and seeing me happy. And it's almost like, what a great lesson for a young person, right? So I think that the one message and the takeaway that I can give anybody that's starting out is don't spend a lot of time in the fear and the doubt and that negative chatter. Like, okay, it's there. I accept it, but move past it because I don't know, that stuff, we can get caught up in it and it's going to really hold us back. We're going to get in our own way.
Yes, exactly. That's an area that I myself have really grown, and I'm starting to like really see that it has held me back quite a bit over the years to have that sort of negative chatter and allow it to fester, like And you don't get that time back, unfortunately. But what a wonderful message about your son. And that's something for me too, as a mom and someone who is an entrepreneur, is my kids. It's a huge factor in a lot of things. And I just absolutely love to hear that your son has been able to sort of like come around and to really see everything. And clearly that also is something that you have done as well for him to be able to reflect that way, seeing that what you're doing and the path that you're taking is something that you enjoy. And otherwise that message for him wouldn't be there. And that's not the reflection he would have got from it, because if you were still not enjoying what you've chosen to do for your passion, it'd be a whole different ball game. So that's an incredible message, like you said, for, kids that are in grade 12. It's that moment in their life where it's like, okay, you're now getting to a point where you need to set yourself free and figure out and go on your own path. And you've been such a great role model for that. And so I love that.
Well, and I think too, thanks for saying that, by the way. I really appreciate that. It's been really a great journey with all of the challenges and some of the adversity, and to be able to see, my business really growing. The role modeling is, what the great thing is that sometimes we don't even know the ripple effect of what we're doing when we're doing it. And I didn't really realize until we had that conversation. And it just was a really wonderful, organic conversation one night at home. He just kind of brought it up. I walked away and I actually said, all I could really say, because it was kind of really so touching, was thanks for saying so. Like, thanks for saying that. I really appreciate that. And I think about that conversation quite often. And one of the things that I took away from that was really about the power of what we're doing and how it can impact other people's lives. And sure, that's a great thing. Sometimes we just don't even know it. So I think, it's not that we are going to go out and just save the world and everything's about the ripple effect, but that feels good too in our jobs, in our businesses, and what we're doing every day. It's great to know that we're impacting other people, whether it's our kids, our neighbor, our colleagues, or other women, whatever it may be. So, I think, that's just a really neat, I'm really so grateful for that. It's actually, honestly, it's kind of been the highlight of what I've done. Was hearing him say that was honestly just something for me that said, this was worth it.
Oh, it's really so touching. It really is so touching to hear, because there is a lot of moms that do struggle with their making a choice, especially starting up a whole new business, the whole unknown of the business side of things, and then also the whole unknown about the personal side and how you're going to get to show up for your children and your family,
right.
and the personal side of things, or even friends for some people who don't have kids. Like, it really, starting up a business can change a lot. You have to set different boundaries, or you're setting new boundaries, or anything like that. So I think that's such a great message for so many people. And like you said, you really don't know who's sort of watching or listening, and the impact that you have on even strangers, for that matter, right? So like, even, showing up on social media and the things that you post, you don't know, it's going to hit somebody in some way. And sometimes I know, sometimes I can sit back and think like, okay, I'm just throwing stuff out there, things that hit me personally. And I don't necessarily think that it's hitting someone else either the same way or a little bit different in a positive way. And then all of a sudden there might be a message here or there saying, wow, thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing, your journey, or saying not just about struggles, but the positive stuff too. People often do also comment on the positive stuff and the impact that just showing up in your sort of authentic self really does impact people. Now, with that being said too, is how have you found support through all of sort of like the growth in your business? So from like day one startup to where you are now, has the support that you've had along the way changed? Do you find that you have more support now or had some more support when you first started?
Definitely more support. And I would say specifically from the community of people that I work with. And it's scary because I don't know these people when I'm starting, and it's allowing myself to be a little bit vulnerable, a little bit unsure of what am I going to do with these new colleagues that I'm working with. And so the support that I feel really comes from, like, I believe in what I'm doing. I'm excited about what I'm doing. I love my career, my second career. And I feel that this community that I'm working with and the communities that I spend time in mostly, I feel really honored, and I feel that my services are making a difference. And I think that's a big part of me feeling like I'm doing the right thing, is I know that the work that I'm doing is helping families. It's helping my clients. It's helping realtors, and it's helping people in the community that are saying, Ray, like, my clients need you. Can you give them a call? So, I mean, my support really comes from the people that are reaching out to me, not just my clients, but the resource people, the people that are other professionals in my industry. So I feel I'm in the right place, because not just because I'm making money, but because I know it's making a difference. That I think there has to be both. It can't just be money, money, money. I'm money driven. And I think really when we're doing something that we know is having impact on others or in the community, whatever that service looks like, I don't know, it's kind of like that. If you build it, they come. And then it's like, oh yeah, like people need me. People need this service. And I think that's where the support comes from, is that continuing, building of relationships and making connections with the community.
Yes. And community connections, that seems to really be a common denominator in a lot for a lot of people, right? You did mention, as far as building connections, was a lot of like reaching out. Have you had any surprise connections that you've made along the way?
Yeah, I think I can say yes to that. In my mind, I envisioned the direct other professionals that I directly would be working with. But as part of my services as a downsizing specialist and organizer, we're doing a lot of getting rid of people's items and belongings and helping them declutter. Was, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And that's a huge challenge. And that's often why people call me, is they don't know what to do with everything. And out of that need that I wasn't even thinking about 2.5 years ago, was making connections with great organizations and working with multicultural societies and working with women's organizations where people are starting their lives over and they need belongings. They need tables and linens and dishes and coffee makers. Well, that's what I do. So because I allowed myself to take on the selling, donating, all that, it's like, now I need to find places for this stuff to go. Besides the landfill, which is not where we want things to go. Besides your typical donation centers. Again, I'm blown away sometimes. I work with 5 main organizations that I didn't even know about or even think about until I was put in that position where I'm like, what am I going to do with this stuff? And it's doing your homework. It's being able to be, reading things in newspapers, on social media, in magazines. So I spent some time in magazines, local magazines and news articles. Oh, right. There's this organization. I never even heard of it. It's a women's organization. I reached out to them, left my business cards, sent an email, Instagram, sent them a DM, boom. And it was just, these wonderful partnerships and collaborations that have come about. I never even thought about that when I started. So it's really being open and being, eyes open to what's in your community already that exists.
Oh, that I love that because like you said, and going back to, you didn't have everything figured out. And here is something that you were able to add, sharing with your community, your direct community, a way to support it and also be sustainable all at the same time. Like you said, you're keeping things out of the landfill as much as you possibly can and supporting your local community. So that's incredible. I think that's that's another great thing to celebrate. Definitely. I just want to quickly go over a few things. So we've talked a lot about the entrepreneur side of things, and I was wondering if you are open to sort of talking about what it is that you do and giving some tips on the downsizing piece of it.
I would say probably, although I came into my company as a professional organizer, the downsizing piece really became a big part of it because in order to get organized, I'm going to say 99% of the time, we've got to get rid of things that we're not using. So that just became part of it in the organizing hat that I wear. In regard to my services, a lot of what I do is straight downsizing. Working a lot with clients, a mature population where people have lived in their homes for 30, 40 years, and they've got their whole life in between those four walls and the roof. And one of the things I tell people right out of the gate, because they're worried that I'm going to come in and tell them what to get rid of and make them get rid of everything. So obviously we know that it's a keep, donate / sell or discard. That's kind of sort of 3 areas or 4 areas that I work in. How do I get people to make those decisions? Is I ask a lot of questions, and it's about how, the obvious, how often do we use it? Is it really something that we see ourselves using in the future? One of the real things for me that I have great success in is when people feel like the things that they've already paid money for, and I tell them, you've already spent the money. When they know that the thought of this item in their home could possibly be upcycled or repurposed or used again, take some of that maybe sadness away or that hardship they feel like, oh, I got to let go of this, knowing that it's not just going to go in the garbage, because that's something that nobody really wants to see happen with stuff. So, I think really the main kind of pieces for me when I'm in a downsizing job with a client is I ask the questions around how are they feeling about me even being there? How do you feel about us downsizing? That's often just recognizing where people are at and meeting people where they're at and having a bit of a platform to have a discussion about that. And it's about building trust with my client. That's the number one thing for me is I want them to know that I have their best interests, and I do in regard to going into their home. And the logistical part of it about donating and selling, that part's really easy. The hard part is more for them. And I like to kind of walk beside them in helping them make decisions and asking the questions. And often what happens is they really come up with their own ideas of what they want to do with stuff. So it really happens quite organically.
I love that. And it just, as soon as you said that, the word that came to my mind is autonomy, and how you were saying that even when you were in high school, and as soon as you felt like you didn't have that choice for what courses you were taking, and that's just it. As you get older, same thing. When you're feeling forced to make choices, it can certainly sort of create a block on seeing a different way of doing things, or seeing that their item could essentially be repurposed for something.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful.
Well, that's right. And I agree with you that there's this resistance sometimes before I even knock on the door. And, I love that my clients feel comfortable enough to say, because I'll say, how are we doing? It's not just, hi, I'm Rae-Lynn. It's nice to meet you. and them introducing themselves. I'm genuinely sitting down saying, how are you feeling about this process? And, I love that my clients feel comfortable enough to say, honestly, Rae, I'm terrified because I don't want you to make me get rid of all this stuff. And I like that people can say that, because I need to know that, because then I need to know what I need to be to them and how I'm going to help them in this process, because it's not just coming in and hauling stuff out by the truckloads, saying bye-bye to your memories. And I also like to come up with ways for my clients to keep those memories and to keep those sentimental things without physically having 49 photo albums. So there's ways. I work with a great digital downside or organizer that can help with some of that. And again, working with organizations, there's ways that we can let go without it feeling like, that overwhelm and trauma for some people. They experience that, when you think about the memories. And, a lot of people are experiencing loss in this process, or have experienced loss. To take away things that are the only memories of that person, it's traumatic. Everything for me is really about paying attention to how my client's feeling, reassuring them, and being very solution based in what we're going to do and how we're going to decide things together. It's all a collaboration.
I love that. Collaboration, that word I know it's going to be popping up a lot this year, definitely. Mm-hmm. And connection and community. And like you said, meeting people where they're at. And also curiosity. I find that when we're open to being curious, and like how you say, you go in and you allow them to let you know how they're feeling, like really feeling, and building that sort of relationship right away with just the question. So you're showing up, being curious of where they're at, and not sort of showing up and saying right away, this is what we're doing. So that's wonderful. I know so many people do have such a hard time letting go of things. I myself can be one of those people for sure. I can only imagine, especially with an older population, like you said, and have had some of these things for so many years. And we really have to allow ourselves to be really empathetic. And the energy that I get from you, I know we're on a screen right now, but it definitely, it's so soft, and it's so like, I was just sitting here thinking like, I could just listen to you talk forever.
Thanks.
You make people feel very, like, I think calm, and that's such a great quality to have when you're dealing with difficult situations.
I really thank you for saying that, because when you were commenting about that, it triggered a thought for me that as a business person, it's okay to say either in your head or even out loud to your client or your other professionals, I actually don't know the answer to that, but let me find out. Or I've never come across this. I'm going to explore this. And I think it's really important. And this is one thing that I really gained from my first career, working with children. Oh my Lord, like there's no one manual. There's no one manual on downsizing and organizing. There's some great organizers out there in the world. There's some great downsizing specialists, but you do not have to have it all figured out on day one. Like, how am I going to handle this? There's no way in business and in life until we get to it, till we get to that moment where we're going to know what to do with it. And sometimes I walk away from a client, and I'm not kidding you. Like, I'll go sit in my car and sometimes I'll have a little cry because my heart is just like broken, or it feels just so hard sometimes with some of my clients. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do about this? Like, I'm not in my client's appointment or consult necessarily processing like that, but I can be in my own space going, I got to figure out a way to make this work. And so I'm forced to, or pushed a bit, where I've got to come up with a solution. It's not even being forced. It's just those opportunities this is a better way of saying it. Those opportunities with those certain clients are causing me to have to visit and revisit how I do business. So like I too am always being refined. I too am always being defined. So you can have a little small vision and template of how you want your business to look. But I can say I celebrate that I've allowed myself to evolve, and a lot of the answers and a lot of the definition of what I do came from just jumping in and saying, I'm committed.
I love it. I really do. All the messaging that you've had since we started talking has been so easy to digest. It's like, it makes me like thinking about it and being a listener, it makes me feel like there's so much potential and hope to either start something from the ground up or just go back into something that maybe someone has already kind of started, or they're questioning whether they want to. Maybe they're a very creative person, which I have another question for you in a second, and they're not sure if they want to take that, hobby, so to speak, and turn it into a business. And one thing that keeps coming up in a word that I jotted down here is I've noticed that there's lots of reframing happening with words. Just a minute ago, you took one word and thought, no, I want to reframe that. And then you switched it to the word opportunities. And that's something that I feel like if we take a second to reframe some of our experiences that we've had and reframe, even the language can be such a important piece. So there's the language that we use to talk to people. There's the language that we use in our own head, and sort of going back to that fear, and doing things scared. And if we reframe this sort of language and everything, that we don't have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. We can do things and figure them out as we go. And also going back to, I have a pup, like she's young, and I thought I've tired her out. But one thing I wanted to touch on is, do you find that being a creative person, having it I use the word creative because I did actually look on your Instagram page and notice that you were sort of doing some painting and refinishing, and that to me is a creative ability to look at something one way and visualize it being different and then executing that. So do you feel that creative ability really is complementary to the process that you take into your business?
For sure, 100%. And I think that when I think about the things I've done, whether I'm refurbishing furniture or whatever I'm doing, and I like that kind of stuff because I like the transformation. And I love seeing something really old look new, or something new look old. I mean, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that whole kind of approach, even to my life, but particularly to business, is that it's changing all the time. Nothing's one thing. It's just always like evolving. And if I don't like how something is, I'm going to make it something else. And, I think about that a little bit. When I first started, this was during the pandemic. When I first started refurbishing furniture, I would do it in a color, or I'd do it in a stain, and I'd be like, oh, I don't like that. And I'm like, I'm going to change it. And out comes a sander, and I just change it. And it was like, oh, I like that. And, it's being able to say that it doesn't have to be this one way. It doesn't have to be the way all the organizers work. And, I'll be honest, when I first started in this industry, and it was less than 4 years ago, I think it's really important I think it's good to look at other people's websites and get to know what other people are doing and be familiar with your industry. I think that's important. However, I think we have to leave lots of room to define it the way it works for us as a person. because then we get into this rut where we're doing all this comparing of, oh, my Instagram page isn't like theirs. And I don't do business like them. I don't have all these nice $1 million containers. And we start to get caught up on what everybody else is doing. And I just tried to kind of focus on, what am I good at? How do I want to finish my piece of furniture? I just kind of spend time kind of defining and refining what makes me happy. And yes, I have to listen to what the need is. And I do have to pay attention to my professional colleagues and my clients. But I think in regard to what is everybody else doing, pay attention to a point, but refine it and define it the way it works for you. And it's okay that you don't post every day on Instagram. It's okay that you don't have the perfect filters. Oh, well, like it's okay. We're still
Yes.
working, right? We're still making a difference.
Yes.
We're still being successful.
Definitely. And I think when people show up, heart-centered is kind of like the combo of words that I like using with it is, like I said, even though we're on a screen right now, I can feel that come across. I can feel that in your energy. And so much of our conversation today, the energy of everything that I'm getting out of it is really just been such a pleasure speaking to you. And I think just to sort of go back to Instagram real quick, because there is, like you said too, there's no manual. There is no manual for what so many entrepreneurs are dealing with, where we're at, in this era of the digital ages, like showing up constantly on social media. And like you said, not worrying about being perfect on there and having filters all the time, but even just a quick scroll sometimes, as long as people are showing up heart centered, I do truly believe that will come across, no matter what you might think about, what it looks to other people, as long as you're showing up heart centered and true to yourself and with the energy of like, this is what I'm bringing to the space. I truly think that does come across for a lot of other people as well.
It's true. And I think one other thought to tag on to that, because I think everything you're saying there really is super valid, is also when you're thinking about, as a business person, a business entrepreneur starting out, that's where it's important to do what you love. Like, I think I heard this when I was young, like, do what you love and you never have to work another day in your life, something like that. That's true. But really there's a lot to say about that, because I think that's where the energy comes from is you're not waking up going, I got to go to high school today. You're picking something that's at the heart of of who you are and what you want to do. And it comes from a place of passion. And I look at other business women, I'm thinking, wow, like they're doing really well from just doing that. And I'm going to use an example. I was watching this girl and she has this amazing t-shirt company. I'm like, that's crazy. And she's doing like 6 figures. And again, it's got to be about the money to a point, but she loves what she does. And I think to myself when I watch it, she loves her job. And to me, it's like, love your job equals success. Love your job equals partnerships. Love your job equal growth. I feel like those are the math equations that I want to pay attention to. Right. So, I mean, it's really, that's kind of leading back to the part in a part of my life where I was starting my second career, was the fear came mostly from, am I doing the right thing? Not so much, I got to make money. Because when I think when you're doing what you love, everything else just comes. All good points.
Yes. Is there any points that we haven't touched on that you would like to make sure that we talk about?
Honestly, I feel like, I think we've really covered so much of it. And I think the biggest thing that for me is, we talked about it too much, but indirectly we talk about fear and doing it scared. But I think the other piece that really resonates with me is being able to push past your limits And what that means to me is we think there's this limit to what we can do. I'm going to go into this career and this is kind of what I want to be. And this is what I want to do. When I talk about pushing past your limits, it's like, this feels icky. This feels hard. This is way too difficult. I've got this barrier here. I have this roadblock here in building my business. I tell myself this, and I would tell anybody else in business, we're supposed to have that. We're supposed to have the challenges. We're supposed to have the adversity, both in business and in our personal life. Push past them, because when you push past it, we get to exercise what we're capable of. We exercise how strong we are in what we're doing. And so it's kind of coming again from that mindset of, this is so hard. You know, when kids are young, they're like, oh, mom, this is so hard. And you're like, keep going, son, keep going. You can do it. You can do it. We just got to take that same stuff to ourselves, that we're supposed to have these times where we just feel pressed against what our capacity is. And I told myself this many times, we're supposed to have that. And this is where we're going to build our strength as a person, as a businesswoman. This is where we're going to grow. This is where we're going to build capacity in what we're able to do. And I equate a lot of it to my past, where I used to be a long distance runner and a middle distance runner. And, you know, I equate my life to it. There's a real parallel for me where I've never run a race. I've never trained a single mile where I'm like, what am I doing here? This is insane. This feels awful. I want to quit, you know, all that kind of stuff. So really, it's the same thing in business. It's the same thing in life. That how do I know that I can't run 10 miles unless I actually run 9, you know? So how do I know I can't run a marathon unless I run a half marathon? So it's being able to push past the limits of what our mind thinks. Oh, I can only run 5 miles. I can only go this far in business. I can only do this much in my life. Not really, because it's so comfortable there. But as soon as you get out of uncomfortable and you push yourself past what you think your limits are, you're like, wow. I mean, like, I look at that now with business for me. I never had any idea that my company would require 3 other team members. I never thought that I would have a problem with balance and not working 7 days a week. I just didn't have any idea that this company would grow the way it's grown. And it's been a good problem. And this year for me, it's thinking about what is going to sustain my business, what is going to be realistic for me in regards to keeping balance in my own life. So yeah, I mean, it's really about accepting that part of your life and that part of your journey in business and in personal, where you're like, this feels awful. This feels too hard. And again, I just say this is supposed to be, and it's going to lead you to this great place of growth and building capacity in yourself as a person and as a business.
Yes. And the word optimism really comes to mind, you know, listening to you talk about it in that way. And I think it's such a great message, because I think so many people do get stuck in thinking, well, the limiting beliefs, right? They have these limiting beliefs. They come from all sorts of places, whether it's the way that they were raised or experiences that they've had throughout their life in other careers or anything like that. And then they have these limiting beliefs, and it's just a matter of pushing through that uncomfortable feeling. And each time we do that and we raise the bar a little bit, and then again, some people will get comfortable again, and we will raise the bar again. And so I'm just wondering too, with that being said, do you have any goals for yourself for this year that are going to put you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah. I mean, I think about this a lot in the last, 6-7 months as business has been growing. I think I don't even know if it's my comfort zone. I think it's not knowing. I don't have the answers. And I don't know what my team will look like in regard to just service delivery of making sure that my team members are growing and that capacity is being built in them and that they're feeling, rich in what they're doing. I mean, that's important to me in my team. And I don't know exactly how it's going to all look. And I think it's okay. It's all right that I don't have it all figured out. I have these great women that I'm going to be working with and that I have been working with. I'm going to actually ask them a lot of the questions of how do you see your role being? So when I don't have the answer, sometimes I just ask a lot of questions.
I love that. I love that
Right?
because it's also including them in everything and collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
So what a beautiful way to build your business and have your team and all of you on the same page. No, I think it's so important when you are working with other people that asking them questions and allowing them to give their answers, whether, it matches exactly or not at the end of the day, allowing them to be part of that with you, I'm sure makes them feel so wonderful to know that you do care, that they're being heard in everything as well. Because I think in a lot of ways too, that's really what a lot of people in general really love. Like your clients, they want to feel like seen in the moment of their hardship of having to deal with downsizing. And you're doing that for them. And you're also doing that for your team as well. So that's incredible.
Well, and I think it's actually thanks for that. I think it's also, it's easier. It's safer. When I say safer, it's more about allowing other people to help define what I do. And I talked about that earlier. My team members, I don't know exactly how the company is going to look with 4 people, delivering services, but we're going to figure it out. And I want to ask the questions to my team members. And it's no different when I go into a client. It's saying, how are you feeling about this? Because I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to have the answers. I don't have to have it in my little manual. This is how Rae handles this, and it's being open as a person, being open as a business person, that you need other people to run your company. You need other people to grow your business. So I think about that. Like I don't really lose any sleep over this whole, I've just hired 2 new team members. They're going to be incredible. I've been working with a fantastic team member. I've had other great team members that have come and gone from business. They've gone on to other things. And I feel really grateful for that. And I think a lot of it has been is I've also allowed them to define and refine what's happening with my company because I need them. It terrifies me to think that I would have to do this all by myself. And there's this little mantra that I've had for a long time, even with my world of sport and fitness back in the day, that we can go faster alone or we're going to go farther together, right? It is so powerful. And I think, and it's even ironic that I used to be a runner. Like, sure, I can go fast, but I want to go farther. Like, there's no way I can run my company without all of these people. And I think what the takeaway for me is I just have to allow it. And I need to take the pressure off of myself to have it all figured out. And knowing that I'm going to have some limits, that I'm going to have some adversity, and I'm not going to have all the answers. Because I think once we spend too much time there, it really holds us back from growing. And I think I've just come to terms with my own life and my business world that like I need people to help me do what I do.
I love that. We do need people. And that's just it. Like we aren't meant to do all these things alone. We are meant to do things together. And I think it is really hard a lot of times for people especially when they are solopreneurs and doing so many things by themselves, that built a business by themselves, to start allowing people in and part of their team. So how you have just explained that you include them as part of it, I think is just such a great way to transition as well into having more team members because of that mantra that you have. I think that is such a wonderful mantra. And I've taken a mental note that is going in there. That's a mental note for me too, because
I think it's an African proverb. I don't know. I researched it. I don't even know who said it, but it's like an African proverb. And it really is true that, I think sometimes we stop dreaming the dream. We stop with the passion of what we want to do because we're like, I can't do this. Like I'm a single woman or a single mom, or I don't have all the players that I need. And we just quit because we think we're alone and we're like, I don't know this. And I think that's good. Feel exactly that. Like that's good to feel that because that's your cue to push past your limit. That's your cue to be vulnerable and start making those connections and start figuring out what other people are doing and pay attention to what your clients are saying, pay attention to your other professionals. So, I mean, that's really about, going farther together is knowing that, yeah, okay, good. I don't have to do this all on my own and I don't have to have it all figured out. And I guess the bottom line is you're not really alone. It feels like you are because you're having to make these decisions. Not really, because you're going to let yourself be defined and refined when you get going. Think about it. When you start a race, when you start any kind of project, or again, I kind of go back to that running race, I would have no idea what's going to happen to me. And I'm going to use in a marathon. I would never have any idea that I'm going to hit a wall at mile 17. And that really happened to me. I had no idea. So, you can't always know what the journey is going to look like. You just have to know before the gun goes off, before you start the business, before you start down the path of something. I'm committed. Whether I got to crawl across that finish line, I am committed because you're going to have moments in that journey, in that process that are going to feel awful and they're going to want to make you stop and they're going to want to make you quit. And I would say, that's normal. What you do with it after that is going to kind of show you what you're made of.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's interesting because running, I don't run anymore, but I used to, and I used to use running and everything mentally that I needed to get through those days where I didn't want to train and I didn't want to get out there, or the weather was just awful. And it was just like, I literally used to put plastic shopping bags on my feet and slip those in my runners to get myself through. But this is, even building that armor against the elements, the things that are going to happen. And I think a lot of our conversation has really been talking about getting, allowing ourselves to feel where we're at, but also pushing through. And everything is, we can figure things out for sure. The word dream to me is so important because I think that when we allow ourselves to visualize things, of course, like you said, we don't know when we're going to come up to a wall. We don't know when we're going to come up to an obstacle. But going back to that sort of original dream and allowing ourselves to get into that space can really help us to keep pushing forward. And visualizing that finish line, or visualizing sort of crossing the finish line and what you're going to do and how you're going to feel afterwards, I think is such an important piece of it all too.
It's really, really true. I mean, and that stuff so parallels to anything in our personal life. And it really can overflow into business and that whole kind of approach and mindset. Yeah, I have to say, I mean, that's really, kind of getting back to your question around celebration. I think that probably is the answer for me is being able to keep going, to let business go where it needs to go. Sure, I can't just sit back and let it, drive itself. I have to have the forward thinking. It's being able to kind of accept all the stuff that's part of the process, whether it's the hurdles, adversity, whether it's the unexpected partnerships, the stepping out of my comfort zone opportunities. Like there's all kinds of stuff that can evolve when we allow ourselves to accept it and be part of it. And that's kind of where that refining and defining come in for me.
Yes. Oh, well, I really do love everything that we've talked about and the message. This is part of the reason why I've also really, it's been a dream of mine to do this podcast, is because I think it's so important to share with people what it looks like behind the scenes, not just, what's on social media and what we see. And like you had said as well, we can easily go and scroll somebody's social media and it really does look like all this positive stuff that's happening, but there's also some behind the scenes stuff that we're not seeing. And I do think it's important to share some of that, to share some of the struggles and talk about what it's like to start a business with nothing, like from nothing. To me, after, our conversation, it really goes back to being heart-centered and allowing yourself to feel all the feelings, to push past some limits, but also to sort of what I like to say is sticking to your true north, allowing your true north to guide you, and also we can change, but being open and curious to why we might feel like a different direction is where we need to go, but also doing things together, community, connection, and being open and curious and reframing sometimes how we think about things in entrepreneurship, I think is so important to do. So I do want to say thank you so much for coming here and sharing all of your information and advice and tips and everything for the listeners to be able to gain. So I really do feel like there's so much to gain from our conversation for people, whether they are just starting out or they do have an established business. I think that there's so many takeaways, and I'm so excited to go through our conversation and get this one aired.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast, so thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and wow, what a thing. Like, I guess that's a good question too. When you saw the call out, like what was it that really prompted you to agree to come on here?
It's funny you asked that. I was just going to comment and say how I got to this point where I even emailed you. I think I emailed you like right away. I really believe in, other people finding their true north, living out their passions. And you had another word there that you used, dreaming the dream. I love all that stuff. Always have. And there was something in your post when I was listening to it, and it was like, yep, we're aligned. I felt like we had similar excitement about this, and I wanted to jump on and be useful in what you're doing. And I just think it's so great. Like, I love listening to your voice. I love how you kind of lead. Your questions are great. And like, I feel like today as I'm working, I'm going to be thinking about this conversation and some of the things that you said to me and some of your questions. Like, I can sit here and go, blah, 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 whatever. But to really apply them and think about this whole hour, whatever amount of time we had, it's really valuable for me as a business person too.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Anchor Your Dreams. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. A big thank you to our incredible guest for sharing their wisdom and insights. If you resonated with today's episode and want to explore more about turning your dreams into reality, be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We have a lineup of amazing guests and valuable content coming your way. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. Share your thoughts, insights, and your own journey using the hashtag #AnchorYourDreams. Head over to our website at meganmcquillan.com in the podcast section, where you'll find the show notes, resources, and information about upcoming episodes. Before we wrap up, I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you. Your support means the world to me, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you. Remember, anchored dreams become goals. Anchored goals become results. Until next time, dream big and stay anchored.